Welcome to Inspired Living with Keri Murphy, the podcast, where as your host each and every week, I am going to inspire you and empower you to share your message and step into that big vision you see for yourself. I'll be bringing you celebrity interviews, influencer insights, and my personal tips from decades as an on-camera talent, TV host, media expert, and entrepreneur, so you can build a brilliant seven-figure brand. Because when you're inspired, you inspire others. So let's go. When you look back on your life, what story do you want to share? What adventures did you go on? What obstacles did you overcome? And more importantly, who did you become in the process? Today, I have the great fortune of interviewing Claudia Chan, who I met a few years ago. She's the founder of s.h.e Summit and actually s.h.e Global. And in this interview, we talked about her last 20 years as an entrepreneur and how she's evolved and how she helps other leaders evolve their approach of leadership, saying that leadership was really structured in a way that didn't support anyone. And now moving into this new era of equity for all, how do we create what she calls a whole being approach to leadership? And she talks about the different pillars and how we can grow our brands and organizations with ease. I'm telling you, it even got me thinking about how I'm showing up and what I'm focusing on in my own life and my own business, because we only have one life to live. And Claudia is such an amazing woman. She's a mom, and she has built a global mission that supports women, men, and equity for all. If you are in a place in your life right now where you kind of feel like life is living you, you're going to love this interview because she's going to empower you to step into what it would mean for you to live life fully. Get ready for a very inspiring interview with Claudia Chan. Claudia, it is so wonderful to have you on the show. Thanks for being with me.
I'm so happy to be with you, Keri, virtually.
Virtually. I know. I think the last time we were just talking that you and I were in the same room together was back in 2019. And, it doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but a lot has happened since then. And you've grown your brand. You've stepped into a greater message as well. I have to tell you, when I heard you speak at Ali's event, I was just taken by your authenticity and your passion for people and how you step into leadership and the s.h.e Summit and all the things we're going to get into today on the show. So I know we're all so busy, so I appreciate you being here. But I have to start off by saying congratulations. Congratulations to making it 20 years as an entrepreneur. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur since I was a baby, pretty much.
That's funny. Me too.
Yeah. I really grew up through the business. And in many ways, I have a 4 and 5-year-old, 4 and almost 6-year-old. And I would say the business was my first baby.
Yeah.
And it has evolved so much, and I've evolved so much, but it just grows with me. And I think that's what so much of entrepreneurship is. If you are in a scenario of not being owned by, a private equity company, or, or like you've got lots of, angel venture capital, and you're, on your breathing down your throat to sell or exit, or, whatever it is. But if you're the kind of entrepreneur that really is building something to make an impact in the world, to give your genius to the world, to have independence and freedom and for lifestyle, it really is a baby.
It is a baby. And that's where we're very similar, because I didn't have my first child till I was 40, had Landon at 44, right?
Mhm.
So we are very similar with kind of where we were with like putting
Yeah.
our energy into our first baby, and now we have others as well. Has it been the same business the whole 20 years for you?
So for the first 10 years, so I'm 46, so like 25 to 35 years old, I ran a women's entertainment company. That was the Sex and the City era, the
Yeah.
2000s era.
Yep.
Was, I would say, the value of women was so placed on, fashion and beauty. And, I mean, just look at culture back then, right? Like Devil Wears Prada. And it was a
Yes.
very material, era, I
World.
feel, for
Yes.
women. How, like, coming through history and the history of gender equality and the history of women. And so that company, we did some s.h.e Girls Night Out events. It was a media platform, like almost a $10 million company by the time I was 30.
Wow.
So Yeah, so ran that for 10 years with a business partner. But then, realized the state of women and girls in the world and was like, wow, we need to mainstream and, gender equality and diversity inclusion and just get women to care about women's issues. So that was the last 10 years. She Global. So there's an s.h.e between before every word.
Yes.
It's like she, and then and really moved from women's entertainment to women's empowerment. And so I've been running this, and
Mm.
She Summit is really the core conference platform that I've been growing and building and evolving over the last decade. And then coming out of that has been my leadership book, This Is How We Rise, and coaching and doing lots of trainings and really creating a whole new leadership curriculum, actually.
Yeah.
For companies and entrepreneurs. So yeah, it's been a journey, but really moving from women's entertainment to women's empowerment to leadership. And leadership is really where we're at to really create a more thriving, equitable, better humanity and world, which is
Yes.
needs to be gender balanced, right? And the world
Yeah.
was not designed that way. The world was designed for a breadwinning male and a child rearing female. And so, especially now with over 5 million women that have exited the workforce since the pandemic started, we're seeing
So
the massive
crazy.
disparities, right? And the
Yes.
imbalances between domestic labor and caregiving, that how much of it falls on women. Even women that are out earning and the breadwinner are still doing majority and more of the housework and caregiving work and managing the nannies, whatever it is, right? All the
It's a lot.
all the
Yes.
invisible emotional labor that goes into it. So
Mm.
yeah, so it's a reckoning right now that's happening. 2020 reset humanity, and it's really time for companies, entrepreneurs, change agents to really rebuild and create the future, to really set up all people to fully thrive and experience equity, because the world that we were living in just was not sustainable. It was
Absolutely.
always at the sake of something, right? Like success and leadership was at the sake of something. And so yeah, I'm excited about also the army of just female entrepreneurs, who are in their next stage of life that you've been growing and having this conversation and how we can empower them.
Yes, I love it. From women's entertainment to women's empowerment. And I'm so with you, Claudia. Like, I'm so on fire right now to help more
Mm.
women create and grow successful businesses and to really step into social causes and all the things that you have done and built throughout your career. Let's just go back because it hasn't been that long since we've had to reset the entire world.
Mhm.
And I'm sure with that, again, you said that your business had really changed and evolved as well. In 2020, what steps did you take in your business to meet the demand and really the gap, right, that is so in front of us today?
Yeah, I think that, the first thing, a big part of our business is selling to corporate America. So we sell, our conference, our award-winning conference called She Summit. The she actually stands for advancing she, he, and equity. So it's really
And did it always stand for that?
the first era was she helps empower, and it was really us speaking to women to
Mhm.
realize their highest potential and lift other women. It was rise and lift. But I realized to get to gender equality and to get to a more, again, equal world for better world for everyone, we needed to talk to women, men, all people, right? And
Yes.
so, the male allyship and getting men in the room. So yeah, so really I say we're a leadership company, still predominantly the people that are doing, the social change work and the empowerment work are women, but more and more we're seeing men and obviously people of color and all the dimensions of diversity. So we're really focused on corporate America, and we sell, group packages. Employee, companies like Morgan Stanley, Samsung, Pfizer, Barilla send groups of corporate women and male allies to our conference. So we took
Mm.
our, the first thing that we did was we really listened, because corporate America obviously was,
Big
you know,
shift for them.
in reactionary mode,
Yeah.
right? They're
Yep.
not buying, like they're not spending money on enrichment opportunities right now. They're just figuring out how do we even operate. I think
Yeah.
last year was that how do we even get our people to safety, working remotely and making sure we're still running a business, right? And so I think that it was just, okay, so we need to almost pause and, really I think it's understanding, who your business is, like who your clients are, and what are you serving, and that when uncertainty or a disaster or a global pandemic happens and a bomb gets thrown on, the first posture is in a way to really step back and listen and learn,
Mm.
and create community. So we jumped into doing community calls with our corporate community, and also we also coach and support a lot of high impact entrepreneurs, like 7, 8 figure entrepreneurs. And so we were listening, and then it was really about like, okay, then you have to put one foot into, like, have one foot here and then one foot into the future, and almost start, this is where my futurist brain kicks in. It's
Yeah.
like predicting where the market is going to go, right? 1, 2, 3, 5 years from now. And I knew immediately that, the pandemic was going to, that working from home was going to be here to stay. Now, I know many companies are going to probably move back to a hybrid mode, but
Right.
now it was all about then how do we reimagine and offer really, enticing programs to companies that would really targeting what they need. And sometimes I think when you want to innovate your products and services, you're so tied to your old products and services. Like there's so
Yeah.
much emotion, and like it's like moving from one
It's a
house to another.
baby. Yeah.
Right. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, do I really want to leave this house? But we've been at this house for so many years and all of our friends. And, where once you leave, it's like, I
I
remember
don't
when
know why I stayed so long.
right.
Right.
I
Yeah.
remember living in the Hamptons for 5 years randomly, and not, and I couldn't imagine leaving. And then I'm like, I never looked back, So I think it's how do we live as much in the future and predict what's going to happen and be ahead of everyone else. And you do need to be bold, you do need to be innovative. But, and every time there is a problem, problems are opportunities for growth, right? That's how we need to see it. If you're approaching a problem and there is a disaster happening, or something really challenging happening, that's an opportunity to seed possibility, to seed
Absolutely.
opportunity.
Yeah.
So we need to recognize that, okay, how do I almost be the innovator here? And that's what we did. And so we evolved the summit into a year-round coaching program, with lots and lots of benefits and tools, very cost effective, and we're reimagining what the next in-person experiences are going to look like. But right now, I'm not even in a hurry to do that, because, and I saw your conference, you're doing a live conference in September, is for
It's a
our,
hybrid as well. We'll
it's a
do a little
hybrid.
of each. Yeah.
Totally. But, for me right now, for me to create something, to announce something, it just doesn't make sense right now, because we just need to see what's happening with people going back to work this fall.
Right.
So yeah, so it's a combination of a lot of different things. And I think the last piece is, giving yourself permission to have the space to really step back. And again, what is your next rise, right? It gives you the space to
Yeah.
really think about what matters, and to
Yeah.
really think about, what kind of work do I want to be doing in this next rise, in this next phase. And we have changed, we have evolved, right? And it's I think innovation is really the word that continues to come to mind, and having
Yeah.
the courage to innovate.
You have to be willing to innovate. And like you said, you have your programs or your products or your services. And right now, even, at Inspired Living, we're going through all our offerings and we're cutting out, and we're asking ourselves, is this the best and highest use of our team, of our energy, of our genius? Is this serving enough people? Is this creating enough impact? And it is hard because you birth a baby and you're like, oh, it's so great. But at some point, you have to kind of clear things out. And I think being innovative is so important, and really looking at where things are headed. For example, if you haven't stepped into the virtual space, or you're not holding a virtual event, or you're not showing up, consistently, like there's such opportunity here, and you can't wait for things to change, because this is it. And I want to go back for a minute, Claudia, because you said a couple things that I think are really important for the listener. And that is, one, you evolved your message with what she stands for. And I think that that's important, because when we are working with our clients on messaging, or someone starting a business, we get so close to the message, and we fear, like, oh my gosh, it can't ever change. And I just want to give that woman, that man, permission right now that you can change your message, you can evolve, you can change the acronym, like you can make it mean something to you now, because you have to meet people where they're at. And in corporate, you were saying that you had to stop, you and your company and your organization, you had to stop, you had to listen, you had to see where the need was. And I feel like for entrepreneurs, it's the same thing. You need to go back to, who am I serving? Where are they at? What is the problem that they're facing? And how do I help them through it? And to really understand that right now, because I do think that there is a lot online. We're all in content overload, content confusion. And so for you to know exactly who you're talking to, and like you have such a powerful message, Claudia, why? Like, why are you sharing this message with them? And so I just want to say thank you for sharing that, because I know someone really needed to hear that today. Was you have permission to change. You actually have to change in order to
Have
evolve
to, right.
into where you're going next, right? And where the world is going next. So what do you see happening in the next 3 to 5 years? What are Claudia's predictions?
For the world,
Yeah, for the world, for like you were saying, to look ahead, to look into the
yeah.
future. What do
So
you
so
see?
much of my work, and obviously your audience is predominantly women, and I believe that every single one of us, we're here for a purpose. And in my book, This Is How We Rise, I talk about not just living your life in the world, but leading your life for the world. And I
Oh, I
believe that we
love
all
that.
have a movement. We are all meant to place our own dent on the universe, right? And for if you're a stay-at-home full-time parent, that could be raising the next, Barack Obama, or whoever it is, Malala,
Yes.
but it is, or, again, impact one, impact a million, it doesn't matter, but we're all here to impact, and we're all here to stand for something. And the authenticity of stepping into fully, wholly who you are meant to be, is really what humanity and the future needs more than anything. And I believe
Yes.
that the world, I mean, when I do leadership work or diversity, inclusion, gender work in organizations, or I coach high impact female entrepreneurs, uh, it is always, I've been saying that, the world was not set up for everyone to truly thrive. I mean, experiencing equity, having an equal opportunity to get a
Mhm.
job or to have a promotion or have a role should be the baseline, right? Like we need workplace systems and businesses that actually set up people to thrive. And so
Right.
all the different so we actually really need to rebuild humanity and what work means in many ways, and how business
Yeah.
is done. And I think that, my guess is a lot of your clients and your community have left corporate jobs, or maybe
A
they,
lot of them have. Yes.
right, a lot of them have
Yeah.
left corporate jobs, and now they're ready to like make their own rules and create their own businesses. Or maybe they're empty nesters, and they have had this idea, and they want to start something. And I would just say that, like, what is the future? Like, the world needs what you're creating, and
Yes.
we're all called to create. And not only are we all meant to give our gifts and talents and our genius and our services and what's inside of us, but humanity needs it, right? I think it's more important to think about it. I'm not just running a business, it's about making a living. It's like, how can your career, how can your business, how can your work be your social impact, be your social contribution?
Yep.
And so a lot of it is, like, what are you making certain products, or, whatever kind of company you are. I think it is, how does your work become your social impact, right? How does your
Mm.
work create and do good? And that's what the future needs. And so we need
To
to
me, that is inspired living. That's exactly what it is.
yeah,
Like doing the work in the world that fuels you, that makes the world a better place, right?
right.
That has the symbiotic approach to just, you know, fulfillment on all sides.
Yeah, definitely. And I think
Yeah.
for entrepreneurs, it is, and it's I think it's doing it. I think the hardest work is doing it with the self-love, right? And doing it
Mhm.
with quality of life, and
Very
mental
much.
health. And how do you really take, like, just exceptional care of yourself in the process. I think that's the hard work for all leaders,
Yeah.
I believe. But especially for entrepreneurs, because you're putting, you're putting your soul right out there. You're like naked sometimes, just
Yeah, you feel so vulnerable.
you do,
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah. So
And
Claudia, I'm so sorry to interrupt. You have two littles at home, right? You're in your mid 40s. You're growing this mission is really what it is.
Mhm.
You're talking about kind of this taking care of you. Can you share with us, like, what do you do? How do you tend to manage it all? Because I think I want to know. Because I will say this last year with having Landon and just growing the business as fast as we are, that the one thing I crave the most, and it's up to me, I understand, is that space, is like
Mhm.
having the space to create, having the space to think, having the space to work out. So how do
Right.
you set yourself up for success that way?
Well, I'll actually share. So I do this with my book, How We Rise. I coach entrepreneurs and leaders, and mostly corporate leaders, but quite a few entrepreneurs as well. And when I do my assessment and my discovery, I always, we really start with highest vision and impact in the world, and really create the space for them to vision.
Mm.
Um, you know, but then I ask, what are the greatest barriers? What were the greatest barriers? If you were to think outside in, looking back at your life, and you were to basically, what's the story you want to tell, and how did my story go? But what were the greatest barriers, right? I like to sort of
Mhm.
start there. Um, and it's amazing what happens when you just sort of step back and you're like, what are my greatest barriers,
It's a great
right? Like, what
question
are
to
my
ask.
greatest barriers?
Yeah.
And not just in your business, but for all of your life departments. So I go through, number one, your first leadership department really needs to be your mental and emotional health, like your mental, physical, emotional, and I would say financial too gets tied into that, right? Because so
Sure.
much of us, the mental health piece is connected to money. It's connected to, just it can create so much anxiety, and it's one of those difficult, invisible conversations that so many can't talk about publicly.
Yep. That
But
I think we need to talk more about, especially as women, but
absolutely,
another
especially,
conversation. Yes.
absolutely. So, I think that is the number one, like your first leadership responsibility. I know you want to dive into like talking to your team, you want to dive into talking to clients, you want to dive into talk, to like write that article, or produce that, do those social media posts that you need to do, and your to-do list. But really, it's like checking in with, your number one responsibility is like, what do I need to be doing when I wake up in the morning? What are my rituals? Am I feeding myself regularly? Like, what is my, in this season of life right now, what is my daily schedule to make sure that my mental and my emotional well-being, is in a good place? And am I checking in with my finances? If that's a part of what causes you anxiety and what like triggers you, then you need to lead. That's like the number one thing that you tackle first, right?
Okay, ladies, are you listening to this? This is important to hear, right? And I love that you said ritual. Like, what's the thing that you do to set up your day? And if you have anxiety around money, you got to look at it. You got to understand it. You have to see what's coming in and what's going out. And I will say, for a lot of women, it's amazing. Even women that are making 7, 8 figures, they're still not looking at their numbers, or there's still a lot of fear around the numbers,
Yeah.
and stress
It's a different thing to
can
earn
kill.
than it
Yeah.
is
To keep.
actually to save and to
Yeah.
manage, right? And I think
Yeah.
that that's, Barbara Hewson, who is a
So I
dear.
just interviewed her.
Oh, I
She's
love
so
Barbara. Oh,
wonderful.
yeah. So Barbara, I've done a lot of money work with her, and she's taught me so much. We support each other's work deeply, and
Ah,
but she really, it's like, money's not about the gross, right? Your financial health and your well-being is not about the gross. It's about what you're saving and how you're investing, and your quality of life. Like, wealth really is peace of mind. It's
right.
well-being. It is, are you waking up every day, or at least enjoying your life, enjoying what you're doing? And I think that for our era of women entrepreneurs, it's like we've gotten here through the strategy to success was putting pressure on ourselves. It's been the
Yes.
hustle, it's over efforting, it's exhausting. And
Yep.
and then you're like trying to juggle like child rearing and marriage and everything else. And it's,
And you
it's,
wonder why you're tired, right? I
yeah,
mean,
it's
yeah,
really, unsustainable. And
yeah.
so I call it the whole life leadership method. And I talk about treating your whole life as the organization you are leading. It's not like you're just running a business and everything else just sort of gets done, right? It is like your whole life. So what are your life departments? Like, mental, emotional, physical health, financial health, your marriage. I actually talk a lot about how, marriage is really your next core leadership department, because so much of your relationship, like if you're like, your priority organization is actually not your company, it's your family.
Yeah.
And so the company, like, so that's my methodology and my framework. So if you are married, or if you're in a relationship, then your partner is really like the co-CEO, co-president of the family
Co-creator. Yeah.
organization,
Yeah.
right? And then you both want vocations, you both want careers, or businesses, whether you're corporate or on your own, whatever it is, whatever your pathway is. But that you want to be giving you want to be doing your genius, you want to be making an impact, and you want to enjoy yourself, right?
Mhm.
And so and that's actually, so I go the health, I go marriage, parenting, and yeah, kids come after marriage, and then and career as your social impact. So it's a really a new methodology, and I would say that that's the third iteration of SHE Global, which was I went from like empowering women, you know, it was like women to like women, all people, and then it was really now I'm like I got to redefine leadership. Like
Yeah.
leadership was
And you
not
are,
designed.
Claudia. Yeah.
Leadership was not designed for women, men, all people. Like leadership was designed for a way of living that really repressed that really fundamentally would always create inequity, right? So and like now you have so many women rising and soaring and out earning, and every company wants 50-50, you know, gender equality, and you know there's all the, you know, more venture capital going to women, and yeah, but what about, they're still doing everything else. Like they're
It is
still
so
like,
true.
we need a new toolkit, we need
Yeah.
we need to learn a new way of leading and living, and that's got to be co-created by the other half of society, you know, women. It's got to have, so yeah, so I would say that, you know, you know, it really is like my number one leadership department is my well-being, and my mental, physical, and financial well-being. Like that is the number one. And if that is organized and in a good place, then I can show up. And also when you run a company, right? It's not just, it's one thing to just be successful in selling products and services, but you also have to show up as a leader. You know,
Right.
are you walking the
Yes.
talk? Are you modeling
Yes.
what you teach and what you say you stand for with your team?
Yeah.
And so, you know, like running an organization is a lot of different roles, and you want to do it consciously, and you really want to walk your talk. It's really, I say, you know, you got to model what you teach, and that is, you know, when we're under stress, we're burnt out, it's rough.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I really appreciate all of that, Claudia. You know, it's so funny. I've been getting acupuncture the last few months, and every time I go in, the doctor is like, how's your relationship? Are you complimenting yourself enough? Are you, you know, because that's first, are you going on your family walks every night? And I will say, we have made it a priority to go on family walks every night. He's like, if you and your husband aren't good, then nothing else is good. The business will not be good. He's like, less stress, less stress. And, you know, it's like, I go just to, for that reminder, because as I'm growing, even inspired living, I will say, Claudia, I'm always thinking about how am I showing up as a leader? How am I supporting my team? How am I creating a culture that expands well and beyond, you know, who I am? And our mission is so great. But what you just said about really the holistic approach to leadership in your life, like you don't just own an organization if you're an entrepreneur, or you're not just a leader if you're in corporate America. Like you really have to look at it from that whole life leadership. And even though that's something that I know, right, for you to say it that way, like these are the pillars, and this is where you
it's a
have to look
reframe. It's a
at your
reframe.
leadership. Yeah. Because I will say sometimes it's easy to be like, oh, I'll worry about the relationship later. My kids are okay. I spend time with them every night, and let me go back to the business. But I have to really agree with you that if you don't have, you know, the self-care in place and the core relationship in your life solid, then how does everything else grow? I mean, really, so
And, yeah,
I think
at the
this is a
sake of
really
you,
important conversation.
at the sake of you, you're the sort of like, you know, as the women, we are, you know, we're trying to hold everything up,
It's
and
insane. It
we
really is.
take
Yeah.
the biggest impact, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you have a baby, you just had a baby last year. I mean, it's like, you know, like that's insane. Like biologically, your body is still hormonally adjusting, right? I
Yeah.
mean, look at how overwhelming and how much all of this takes. And so we've got to, you know, shift to this place of, you know, am I, Kate Northrup, who wrote this book, Do Less, she's in my community, and she always says
She's wonderful too. Yeah.
body first, business second, like body before business, you
Mhm.
know, and how do you almost design your, again, your whole life, have a whole life vision, you know, and, you know, that's a whole other tool that another part of the framework. But it's actually, I sit down with my spouse, and where you sit down with your partner and you actually design a whole life vision wheel. And I always say, like, so like, let's say I'm 46 years old and I get to live to 90, right? Like, let's just say I'm lucky enough to live to 90. That's
Yeah.
44 years I have left of my life to create the vision and what really matters.
Yeah.
So the training that I do really roots you into step, like really starting from that outside in place. Like, okay, I'm 90 years old. Like, you know, what pivotal thing did I do at 46 that set my life on a new trajectory, about rooting myself in what matters. And we were talking
Mhm.
about earlier, like, yeah, but like the change, and like, you know, you're coming from years and years and years of doing things a certain way, and you're so afraid to let that go. A great way to
Yeah.
let it go is to think of it like outside in, if you know, like look at your 90-year-old self, looking at how did your last 40 years of your life go, you know, and what story do you want to tell, and what really mattered, and you know, and how do you want your kids running around and seeing two stressed out parents, and you know, because they're strung out because, you know, of their careers. And so, you know, I think that that's the time where yeah, we really need to prioritize our well-being first. And it's just the oxygen mask. That way we can actually do better work
Mm-hmm.
that serves us, that serves our clients, that serves humanity, that serves our family. And then the other, and again, the financial piece is such a big part of it. I
It
mean,
really
some
is.
people
Yeah.
might be like swimming in it and are all like, where they're really on top of their numbers and they have that confidence. But, you know, like Barbara and I, you know, her research and the research that is out there is women, you know, women have very uncomfortable relationships with money, you know,
Yeah.
and so that's a huge piece of it. And Barbara Houston, for anyone, I recommend you'll listen to her on, you know, Keri's interview series, but
Yeah.
she's amazing as a
She's
wealth coach.
so wonderful. I just loved her interview and loved her thought and how she brings neuroscience
Oh, yeah.
into money. Yeah, absolutely. Go listen to her podcast. Go get one of her books. You know, she's great.
Yes.
And
Rewire for wealth. She helps you
yes,
with this
rewire.
rewiring process.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is great.
That's so great that you two work together. I love how like we're all 1 degree. Like,
It's
yeah.
an intellectual group for sure.
Yeah.
It's an
So
amazing one. The other thing that I wanted to share with your audience was I have this other acronym that I use called EASE. And it's like these principles that I lead businesses with, and I also try to coach clients with, which the E stands for. So how do you run a business with ease? And so the E stands for exceptional. I would rather do, and I encourage clients to do one or two things exceptionally well,
mhm.
and really love, like, you know, like what are the one or two things, maybe a third, you know, but what are the, like, you know, when you really want to step back and really go through an innovation exercise and a reckoning, right, with like a
Yes.
reset on
This is a really good time to
whole
do that
life
too.
and your
Yeah.
business, right,
Yeah.
is, you know, what are the things that because we change, you know, you might have loved doing something like 3 or 4 years ago, but you know, we
For
have
sure.
people and our
Yes.
life has changed. You didn't have a
Yeah.
second baby, you know, 3 years ago, right? So
Right.
it is, you know, so it is, you know, what are one or two things that you could do exceptionally well, like over deliver to your clients and your marketplace. And there are things that are, you know, like in terms of execution, in terms of, you know, loving the work, right,
Mhm.
and you're better off doing those one or two things really, really exceptionally well, and letting go of the rest, right? So that is one that's what the E stands for. The A stands for agility. So how do you also set things up so communication, workflow, you know, is quick to move, right? Like you
Mhm.
can, you know, it is a culture where you can move quickly. And yes, sometimes, especially you've got new people starting, or there's, especially with digital communication and people not being in the same physical space, sometimes it's hard to get team members on the same page, right?
Yeah.
And different personalities, and there's only so many hours in the week, and that sort of team culture building to align everybody. But how do you also sort of step back and be like, what, you know, how can we make communication and collaborative work done in a more agile way where we flow better, right? So
And I
the
think that's
agility,
absolutely possible. I mean, we have such an amazing
yes,
team right now, and we
but you
pivot
have,
so
right.
quickly. And that's the great thing about being an entrepreneur and not being a big corporate behemoth, you know, is that you can pivot and change quickly. You can be super
Yeah,
agile. And I really do think, Claudia, you can create a really beautiful culture with team. Um, and that's something that I'm always working on. But
yeah,
I'll let you
absolutely.
finish.
But
I'm
and you
loving
know,
it. I'm
like
keeping
I've
notes.
gone through seasons after 20 years. I've gone through seasons where it's come so easy and it's been so agile, and then I've gone through seasons where it's not.
Yeah.
You know, it's just hard. It's like, it's almost like God is, and I'm a Christian, a woman of faith, so I always bring God into everything. But when I do have a culture where things just, I feel like there are barriers, and it's so hard to get the most simple things done. And I know women out there or entrepreneurs out there know what I'm talking about. We're like, wait, like, it used to be so easy for me to get this simple thing done, and now we can't
Yes.
like communicate. Um, is that, you know, that's also, again, a sign, right? To sort of step back and address, okay, what is energy has to feel really good, right?
Yep.
Energy has to feel really good. And what needs to be put in place to get us back to a good energy. Sometimes you have the wrong people, right? You have the wrong, or a
Or
person
the
has,
wrong process or
yeah,
something that just has to be looked at for sure.
that's
I
right.
cannot,
That's right.
I'm so with you. I understand
So
that.
agile at ease, and like, how do you make things as simple as possible? Sometimes I think we need to stick to like these old archaic way of doing things, but agility is really big. The S is like, is there at least one thing that is scalable that can be sold, right?
Mhm.
That doesn't require you to do every piece of the work,
Yeah.
of your brand. And like, you have a beauty line, you sell a beauty product, like that's great. Like that can scale without you, right?
Right.
If you're in front of, you have to be in front of the camera all the time, that's harder. And so, and that's where I love the coaching work, but that's where the She Summit work, the She Summit platform, it's like, okay, that's the scalable platform, right?
Yep.
Like that can actually, other people can run that, without me. And then the E stands for, well, it's really effort efficient, or effort is, basically about, let your past mistakes, like let your past, the mistakes and the errors that you've had in the past, or the challenges, let that inform your future, if that makes sense. Like, learn, the
Absolutely.
fails are really good. You actually have to fail, and you have to make those mistakes, because that means you're actually
Growing.
growing. Exactly. And so, but if that's actually the gold is actually the fails. The gold is actually all the errors that you made. And it's an amazing exercise. Like, if you're ever feeling stuck, or if you're just like contemplating the future and like strategic planning, it's like, wait a second, like just like asking yourself questions like, what are the things that I'm not good at? Like, what are the things that, where do we keep on hitting bumps in the road, and
Mhm.
what is that trying to tell me, right? There's like, the genius of your future lies in those past mistakes and those past
Yes. Oh,
challenges.
so
And it's an
good.
amazing reflective exercise to do, because really, whether you've been in business for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you have, or even if, again, like you had a corporate career, right, for 20 years, is like go back. It's like contact tracing, like, it's like, go back to your history, and even write down like your patterns to success, your patterns to mistakes, and like what you don't like to do, what you love to do. It's the history that is your
Mhm.
gold to inform what you really want to focus on in your
Mhm.
next rise.
So good. So we have an exercise. So you're going to go back and retrace the past and look at those things. And I'm going to say, go fail, go out there and just fail, because without failure, you cannot step into greater success. I really strongly believe that if it wasn't for all the failures that I've gone through and all the adversity and all the challenges, I wouldn't continue to be able to evolve as a woman and to continue to grow the company the way. And we still fail every day at things, So, and then also, like you said, like the life plan, the life vision, where do you want to be at the end of your life? What do you want to look back on and say, at 30, 40, 50, I did this, and this is what I'm committed to creating, and this is how I'm showing up in my whole life leadership and taking responsibility, not just for my organization or my business, but truly for my life. I mean, that is such a powerful message, and no one can give that to you except you. You can either let your life run you every day and you can be exhausted, or you can plug yourself in and find what charges you. And Claudia, really quickly, I wanted to also add that we were talking about, women, and we're so hard on ourselves sometimes. And, yes, I just had a baby. And sometimes I'm like, so what? So I just had a baby. Let's just keep going. Oh, so, I'm in constant pain. Who cares? Let's just keep going, like, and there are things that I think women, we have to give ourselves grace and compassion for wherever we're at and whatever we're going through. And that the more vulnerability and the more real stuff that I think that we share, the more people can truly see leadership in us. I think it's when we try to show up as these perfect beings, or, that we're constantly avoiding failure, and everything in our life is perfect, that people can't relate to that. And I think that you have been such a beautiful example for so many people of what it means to rise up in your life and to really create this amazing platform that's going to
Yeah.
be, a
Well,
worldwide, and is a worldwide mission. So I just want to say thank you for that. But I think
yeah.
women, like, you need to give yourself some grace, and you need to allow yourself to evolve into that next version that will continue to pursue the vision that you have for your life. Because I think, that what you achieve now isn't going to be the same. It's not going to be the same version of you that will achieve what you see later in life.
Yeah, and I love the question, like, what story do you want to tell?
Yeah, I
Right?
love
If you
that.
are 90 years old, and you're okay, yeah, for like, I grew up here, I went to college there. My first era of my career was this, but then, like what story do you want to tell? And then, and then just like thinking about like the family that you created and the experiences and the journey that you had. I think again, you only get this one shot at life, right?
Yeah.
And we got to get out of the vortex of, again, it's the over efforting and the pressure of, making our businesses and, we need to really think it's treat your whole life as the organization that you are leading. And what is the vision for your life? I
Mhm.
also love, I always say this quote in my trainings, that your schedule is less about what you get done and more about who you want to become.
Mm.
And we were all created, like God created us to, there's just like, come the end of life, they're not gonna, like the universe is not gonna say, why were you not more like XYZ? They're gonna say, why were you not more like Keri Murphy? Why were you not more Claudia Chan? Right?
Right.
You are meant, there's 7.8, almost 8 billion people on the planet, and you're meant to have this extraordinary journey. And what is that vision? What story do you want to tell? So that's number one I wanted to say. The second piece is, and I credit Barbara Houston for this work, is that again, the pressure, because she actually noticed that about me, like, because coming from my Chinese family, right? And I think it's the truth for all of us as women who had to fight. Like we're the first era of women that really fought to be in the workplace, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
look at Melanie Griffith and Working Woman, and like the Gen X
Love that movie. Yeah.
generation of like, we're
Yeah.
like 2020 was what women having 100 years of the right to vote. So we're so new, we're like such a young generation, and for women even working. So we had to work so hard to get here. But Barbara's like, your strategy to success is putting pressure on yourself. And really it's much easier with love. And
Mm.
if you actually love yourself, anytime you find yourself pressuring yourself, or like, yeah, okay, who cares? I just had a baby. Like, this is where,
Just keep going.
the
Yeah.
voice has to be love. And
Mhm.
a great reframe around that, and a great tool is what would you say to your child? Like your
Mm.
little baby, like how old is your first child? Is 5, 6,
He's
7,
5.5. Yep. She'll
5
be
and a half.
6 very soon. Yeah.
Imagine your 5 and a your 5-year-olds saying to themselves what you say to yourself. When you're beating yourself up, when imposter kicks in, and how,
Yeah.
as a parent, how much you would love that parental voice, that mom voice. Baby, you are so amazing. Are you kidding me? You can do anything. And, you're going to fall and you're going to get the boo-boos, and like the boo-boos are good because they're going to make you stronger and better. You almost have to be your own parental mom voice, right? You
Yeah.
have to love yourself. Like what would love say to you? What would your mom,
So
or the most
good.
person that loved you and most in the world, say to you, right? Like we
Yeah.
have to have that kind of talk to ourselves like 24/7.
It's true.
And it's the unwiring that Barbara talks about. So yeah, we've got to prioritize that, again, that self-love, that health piece, and really change how we talk to ourselves. The other thing too is that I always say, after 20 years of running a business, it's less about growing the business, and it's more how the business grows you.
Yes. I could not agree with you more.
It's really like all the stuff. It's not about this material. Yeah, it pays the bills, and yeah, we employ people, and we make an impact. But it's really the journey so much. The real journey is how, and doing all that courageous work. It's really how you grow and who you become in the
Yeah.
process. And again, it all goes back down to what matters, right? And so that's also a big thing that I try to remember. Oh, like this is showing up again, and how come I'm going through this literally after so many years of doing this business? Or why, like we're just so hard on ourselves. And I
Yeah.
think that it is, oh wait, this is the next, what comes after, like what's waiting once you're done with one battle is another battle, and the
Is
greatest
another one. Yes.
really
Yeah.
is. And the battles are always in your mind. It's really all
Yeah.
inside more than anything.
Everything is there though, isn't it, Claudia? I mean, everything is in our mind. So the more we can like understand the triggers, our past, what we want to step into, like the more conscious we can become, and how we understand our subconscious is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah,
It's amazing though, to me, what we can create and the power of our minds, what we're able to do. So
it
I
is.
love this message. I adore you. Thank you so much for sharing your
You're
genius
so
with us.
welcome.
You're
This was
amazing.
so
I can't
fun.
wait till we can be in person again, even though I was told don't say miss, right? I can't wait. I'm excited for the time that we get to be back in person together. What does inspired living mean to you? I think we've pretty much talked about it the whole entire interview, but if you could encapsulate it into a few sentences.
Yeah, I just think it's, I think the last piece, which is, we're work in progress. We're everything that happens to us. Like things don't happen to us, they happen for us.
Mhm.
And whether it feels like it's a struggle or it feels something really exciting, it's all pulling us towards what we're here, who we're here to become, and who we're meant to be, and which is someone extraordinary,
Yeah.
and our greatness. And I think that inspired living is living in a way where it's like not, it's moment to moment, right? It's increment to increment, and it's of just growth. Like, again, like everything that we experience is growing us. Like even like parenting toddlers or being
Oh,
teenagers, right?
that will
It's,
grow
it
you.
really, it's
Yes.
all about growing you.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not about us changing them. It's, they're already who they are. It's more about
Mhm.
how do we show up, and how do we like, even with your spouse, with your team, it's all about growing us. And that is inspired living, is staying in that and all of that personal growth work and that reflection work of how we're growing. That is how we're gonna give and do our best and become our best.
Mm. So beautiful. I love that. So, Claudia, if someone wants to learn more about you, they want to connect with you, maybe they're interested in working with you, how would they go about doing that?
I'm going to just share my email, which is Claudia at s.h.e global, SHEGLOBL.com. And you can just email me directly. And I love it when I had Ariana Huffington at one of my earlier conferences. She's like, here's my email address. I'm like,
Yeah,
that's a
I
good
love
idea.
that. I remember Ariana doing that too. I mean,
Yeah.
that's very generous.
Yeah. So, and, just like reach out to me. I have various coaching programs, and, yeah, and help you create your platforms and your movement. And I've saved marriages and mental health and financial health along the way, because it's the
It's
whole
all
life
together.
leadership piece that is everything. And once you step into that authenticity and really in that flow of ease that we're talking about, that's when
Yeah.
everything just comes.
Yeah.
It's like shifting in this place of ease and flow with your health and your financial, your mental, your physical, like all of that, is in a healthy, thriving place. That's where everything just flows and comes. And there's healing work too, by the way. There's healing work that's
Yes.
part of that.
I've done
So
a lot of that as well. And just even hearing you today, Claudia, was such a great reset for me. I think that there's times in your lives where, in my life, I will say, where I'm so focused on one area, and yet I'm very mindful of all the areas. And, to really shift the paradigm of, yourself first. And we know that, but how do we really honor that, and your relationships and your children? Because it is really easy to get up every day when you love what you do and to be like just pouring yourself into that and not nurturing those other aspects so much. So thank you for talking to us and really creating this new sense of leadership and equity. And you're amazing. I appreciate you.
oh, and then last, I forgot, I do have a podcast as well, if you want to just catch up on some of my content and you want more of this. And it's the How We Rise podcast by Claudia Chan. So
All right, we'll make sure we put that all in the notes so people
perfect.
can go and click and link and email. And thank you so much, Claudia, for sharing your genius with us today. You've just heard another uplifting episode of Inspired Living with Keri Murphy, the podcast. I hope you loved it. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And if you'd like to know more about Inspired Living or to get your hands on many of our awesome free resources, such as the Be Studio Ready Guide, simply visit us at inspiredliving.tv/podcast. Remember, your vision is your destiny, and we're here to help you bring it to life. Join me again next week for another extraordinary episode.